I've been reading up on the history of the old house. It's the kind of place ghosts run away from in terror. Grisly murders, curses, lunacy. Luckily, devil worship makes me smile, so this is my idea of a paid vacation.
Alone in the Dark, developed in 1992 by Infogrames for PC and later released for the 3DO and Mac computers. The year is 1924, and Jeremy Hartwood, the owner of the haunted DeSerto mansion, hangs himself in his loft. Both Emily Hartwood, Jeremy Hartwood's niece, and Edward Carnby, a struggling private detective, are drawn to the mansion. Emily Hartwood wishes to find Jeremy's piano in hopes that in the secret drawer she can find his suicide note and investigate his death. Edward Carnby is contacted by an antique dealer who wishes to take the piano from the mansion before everything gets cleared out. Little do they know that Jeremy's suicide was to prevent an evil force living underneath the mansion from taking his body, and now it's after Edward Carnby and Emily Hartwood. Alone in the Dark is a third-person survival horror adventure game, and actually the very first three-dimensional survival horror game ever made. That's right, this granddaddy of survival horror games is the reason that we now have Resident Evil, Silent Hill, and all the other classic survival horror games we enjoy to this day. You can even see a lot of the early inspirations and design choices for Resident Evil, such as the pre-rendered backgrounds, puzzle solving, and even the inventory system. At first the objective seems clear, find the piano, which the game actually begins in the loft, but once you start to investigate further, you find there is a horde of undead monstrosities after your flesh. You do find an inventory of weapons as you proceed through the game, such as knives, swords, and guns, but ammo is very, very limited in this game. There's usually another way to distract or take out the creatures, which you gotta use a little bit of brains in order to figure out. In times where combat is your only option, the controls are a little clunky. Now mind you, this is a very early 3D survival horror game, so the controls aren't perfect. You have a command menu where you can select such actions as open, close, fight, push, pull, and later on jump. You select one of these actions and return to the game, and the spacebar executes these actions. For fighting controls, you must hold down the spacebar and use one of the 4 directional buttons to execute the attacks. These attacks are very slow and very drawn out, so it's recommended you find one of the weapons later on before you engage in any combat. Just like a lot of early horror games, the slightest mistake in Alone in the Dark can mean your instant death. Even reading a book can instantly kill you. That's how unforgiving this game is. Alone in the Dark is heavily inspired by the works of H.P. Lovecraft and Edgar Allan Poe. The mansion itself is inspired by the fall of the House of Usher, and books inside the game even make mention of monsters from the Cthulhu mythos. Alone in the Dark is a very, very challenging game, requiring you to solve tough puzzles and find certain items to proceed, but it also always seems there's something always waiting around the corner for you, making you use a little bit of smarts to get through. Going back to another thing Resident Evil stole from this game, it even uses the same exact control scheme, whereas you have to hold the up button to move forward, turn with the left and right keys, and you can back up using down. It can get clunky, cumbersome, and tedious at times, but apparently Resident Evil really liked this control scheme. I'm not trying to say Resident Evil ripped off Alone in the Dark, but you can definitely see a lot, and I mean a lot, of inspiration taken from Alone in the Dark. Carnby and Emily also move pretty slow. There is a way to run, but it involves you having to tap the up button twice, and sometimes it doesn't work like it should. Alone in the Dark may seem crude and clunky by today's standards, but it's still a defining moment in horror game history and remains a masterpiece to this day. If you have trouble finding a physical copy, don't fret, because you can get the game from GOG.com for about $6, and as a bonus, it comes with Alone in the Dark 2 and 3 as well. Alone in the Dark spawned 4 sequels, each as equally fun as the last, and has a new game coming out fairly soon. After Alone in the Dark, Edward Carnby became the main protagonist of the series, and his adventures continue investigating all different kinds of horrors from all over the world. There isn't much else to be said about Alone in the Dark, other than that it's a groundbreaking title, and led the way for the big horror franchises that we play today. Well, guys, that's going to be it for this episode of the 31 Games of Halloween. Please leave a like and a comment down below, and subscribe if you haven't already, and please share with your friends. I thank you so much again for joining me, and I will see you tomorrow on day 20 of the 31 Games of Halloween. Have a good night.